Hi, Chris. Welcome back to the show. Glad you are here. We're here to talk about your amazing product, the MyVitalC. And maybe if people don't remember the last episode you were on, maybe you could recap a little bit about what this product is all about and why people take it.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, thanks for having me back. I'm excited that you'll have some interesting things to share with your audience. It's no longer a surprise for me, but it still is very nice to hear when somebody comes up with kind of positive things to say about the product. Because I'll share the short story,
Mhm.
or as short as I can. And part of that story is like, I didn't invent this to be a health product.
Right.
I just kind of serendipitously ended up here, didn't want to be a supplement person, and now I am. And so, yeah, it's kind of very reaffirming when people give positive
Mhm.
testimonies about the product. Um, Long and short of the product, there was a molecule or a whole collection of molecules that were discovered in 1985 at Rice University here in Houston, Texas. Those three professors who discovered, really, it's kind of affectionately known as buckyballs. Those three
Mhm.
professors won the Nobel Prize in 1996. So discovered in 85, won the Nobel Prize a short 11 years later for that discovery. That most abundant molecule, the buckyball, is an amazing molecule. It's harder than a diamond. It turns into a diamond. It's got six-fold symmetry. The best way to imagine it is if you think about a soccer ball. The lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have the spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. It's big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. In fact, there's a new symbol in chemistry because of this buckyball. The at symbol, we're familiar with it with email.
Mhm.
Lanthanum at C60 means lanthanum physically trapped inside of it, not covalently or ionically bonded
Okay.
to the exterior. So pretty amazing. They won the Nobel Prize. They thought we would be working with it on a more regular basis by now, just because of all the amazing properties that it has. And part of working, when people start working with material, you want to understand, is this material toxic? For various reasons, they thought it would be toxic. So they did a toxicity study and they published the results in 2012. In that toxicity study, they gave rats water, rats olive oil, and then rats olive oil. And we really call it, at this point, for human consumption, we call it ESS 60.
Mhm.
Those rats, again, despite this being it was supposed to be a toxicity study, despite it being a toxicity study, those rats that were really given the MyVitalC formula lived 90% longer than the control group. So it's the single longest longevity experiment on mammals ever.
Mhm.
At that point, we started getting phone calls. People were like, hey, how much in a dose? We're very conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. We're uncomfortable calling it a dose. And we actually tried not to get into the supplement market from when that was published and when our phones started ringing about mid 2013 until 2017. Late 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following starts talking about all the benefits he's getting from taking the product on a daily basis. And now our phone went from ringing once or twice a week to 10 times a day. Yes, my business partner and I are carbon nanomaterial scientists. We're also entrepreneurs, and this was clearly some sort of opportunity. So we, in earnest, well, actually, we asked ourselves two questions. You might be hearing a little thunder here.
Yeah.
We asked ourselves two questions. The first question is a moral question. Am I comfortable selling it, or are we comfortable selling it? I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team takes it. Yes, we're comfortable selling it. And then the next is the FDA and the FTC, and there's guidelines that they have. You got to cross your T's, dot your I's. We're
Mhm.
doing that. And so 2018 was when we started selling it on a regular basis. And we got really fantastic testimonials for the first probably 9 months of 2018. I would answer the phone regularly, and people would tell me some amazing testimonial. And part of me was like, okay, I believe, if it was you, I'd be like, Tiffany, I believe what you're saying, but I don't know what to do with it, right? Like, I'm a
Mhm.
scientist, and I think it's beat into people's heads that anecdotal information just doesn't count.
Right.
Well, that's actually not true. The beginning of a scientific process is always anecdotal information, right? Hey, you've got these anecdotes. You're like, hey, I have a theory that MyVitalC might be helping with sleep. So let me start a sleep study, which we've actually done. Or I have a theory that it's good for, I don't know, knee pain, because that's one of my testimonials, that I had a knee pain from playing soccer for 25 years that went away when I started taking the product. And then you go, okay, well, let's go do a study. And so people were sharing these great things. And about 9 months in, I'm like, okay, this is really happening, right? Like so many people were saying so many positive things. This is really happening. And that's when I was like, okay, I feel like it's my obligation to share this with as many people as possible. And let me do that and get on podcasts. And you were gracious to have me on your podcast. And then we got you some product. And so I'm excited to hear kind of your thoughts and what your experiences have been on the product.
Yeah. So I also happen to have the Aura ring. I wear it on my thumb because it's so thick. And that's kind of how this evolved when we were talking last time is, it's a good way to track your sleep and then take these products and see how it works with the sleep. And so, so I've done it. So just for the listeners, you track yourself for different parameters for 10 days without taking the product, 10 days on the product, 10 days off the product, and then 10 days, or did I start that opposite?
It's off. You get your baseline off. Yeah.
Yep. Off, on, off, on. So 10 days at a time. So, I started, that didn't sound right as I was saying it. So anyway, so I did that, kept track of my sleep, and with the Aura ring, there's an app on your phone and it just, has all the data in there. It's pretty amazing. And lots of telltale signs. And one of the questions, you just have to point this out, and this doesn't even have to deal with this product, but just in general, if you are consuming alcohol, that will absolutely 1000% impact your sleep, no matter how much you've had for most people, from what I've seen, and I've seen it myself too. So one glass of wine can definitely impact the quality of your sleep. So what I did was, started taking it, and I mostly put it in a smoothie, if I made a breakfast smoothie or whatever it was, or sometimes I just took it like a shot, and it tastes like olive oil, basically, right? So it's not this huge like glass of oil that you're drinking or anything. What is it? 5 milliliters?
Yeah, a teaspoon.
Like a teaspoon,
5 milliliters, which is a teaspoon.
Yep. So started doing that, and it was very cool to see the data, change with the amount of sleep I was getting, the hours of sleep, but also the parts of your sleep. So the awake time, your light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. When I was on it, those measures improved. I was awake for less of the time. I had better deep sleep. I had better energy the next day, and those types of things happen. And then when I went off of it for the next 10 days, there was a decline in some of that. Not super drastic, but definitely a decline. So it was just really interesting to see how it didn't even seem to matter if I took it in the morning or if I forgot it in the morning and took it in, at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. It didn't seem to matter for me anyway, how it affected my sleep. So it was pretty amazing to see.
Yeah. So great. Like we're seeing anybody that we've had go through the program is seeing kind of similar results. And I've actually asked the guy, Ryan, our guy internally, who's kind of coordinating the project. We need to have the summary data put together. And you mentioned alcohol. One of the things that's interesting is we have a number of testimonials that this actually helps with hangovers. Right. So you can drink, and in a situation where you might normally have a hangover, you're not getting a hangover. In fact, one of the original conversations I had with the consultant for Aura Ring that we're working with, he's Benjamin. He's a professor out of the University of California, San Diego. And I was on the phone with him one day, and I was like, hey, you probably have some interesting data as it relates to alcohol. And he's like, yeah. And he sent me, his own personal results. And what happens is your resting heart rate takes a really long time to come down.
Yeah.
when you've had 1, 2, or more drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I noticed in my data, and I actually forwarded it to him, was that wasn't true on nights when I've had 2 or more drinks. It didn't take that long for my body to actually, for the resting heart rate to get down to that kind of baseline for sleep. And so it'd be interesting to
Very
look at your
cool.
data.
Mm-hmm.
As I look at it now, every now and then it takes a little bit longer, but it's definitely better than if I wasn't on the product.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, to wake up when you've had maybe a few too many and to not have a headache and to not have an upset stomach, that's a different experience, on the product versus off the product. And again, if
Right.
it's helping you get that better sleep, that sleep is about healing. Maybe it's helping to actually metabolize the alcohol, because that's something that has to be done, right? Your body has to take care of that.
Yeah.
But it does seem to have an impact on hangover helper.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't test it like that. So it might be interesting, going forward. But yeah, it was, I think the most I had was like a glass and a half of wine or
Yeah.
something. So that would be interesting to see. Cause yeah, definitely the heart rate takes a longer time. It basically goes to the lowest right before it's time to get up in the morning,
Yeah.
is what has happened to me in the past.
Did
So,
you happen to look at that piece on those nights that you had the glass and a half? Like, did you kind of see any difference? You might not have been looking for it.
I wasn't looking for it. I just know that it was
It still took a
later than
while.
it should have been, but I didn't look at the actual numbers specifically on that, but I have it all. I have it all in my app, so I definitely can.
One of the sleep testimonials that really kind of drove me, was a guy I know who's a business coach, and the way he described it, he was like, for 50 years, I needed an alarm clock to wake up. As soon as I started taking MyVitalC, I was waking up before the alarm clock and well rested. And then I spoke with him on, just one-on-one basis. And yeah, as a business coach, you're entertaining from time to time. He's like, on those nights that I'm up late entertaining and maybe drinking, I'm still waking up before the alarm clock and ready to like take on the day. So
That's huge.
it seems like it's not just that it helps you get a good night's sleep. It seems to make the sleep more efficient, so that if you only do get a shorter amount of sleep, you're significantly more rested than you would have been.
Yeah, that's the other thing I noticed. And we were sort of talking off before we were recording, that prior to even starting this trial, I've been struggling to get to that 7-hour time of sleep. I think maybe I got to 8 hours twice during that time, which I don't know why or how that happened, because that's an anomaly for me right now. And so what I would say, though, to your point, is that even though I wasn't always getting to that 7-hour mark, sometimes it was barely over 6. I don't really set an alarm. I just get up by 6 or 6:15 pretty much, without any effort, and I'm ready to get up. I'm ready to go. So even though, like you said, you're maybe not getting the best quality of or the length of time, it's probably better quality than what you're getting, so that you are more re-energized and refreshed in the morning. And that's one of the parameters on the study, is looking at, do you feel, more or less tired after taking the product, on each day of the sleep. And so it's kind of cool to see how that trend sort of changes. And sometimes you have bad days or bad nights or whatever, and that just happens. But overall, I started having more energy throughout the day, despite the hours I had slept. So
yeah, one of our testimonials, people often ask, like, how quickly does the product work? And our shortest testimonial in terms of how quickly the product worked was a lady, an influencer that we got some product to, in her first video as the testimonial, shared she didn't finish her cup of coffee, right? And if you're a coffee drinker and you noticed that you didn't finish your cup of coffee, it's because you didn't need it. And it's a little surprising. It was clearly surprising to her. And so that energy boost that comes, like our most consistent testimonial, people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then they report better sleep that night. And that's why we're doing the sleep study.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's the thing you hear people say all the time, that they go to coffee straight up for the caffeine boost and to get them going. They think that that's going to make their days better. And a lot of times it causes crashes, but yeah, so that's a huge story for someone who's been using coffee to get their energy in the morning.
And you have to be careful with coffee. A lot of people don't realize coffee it isn't like, oh, in 2 hours it's out of your system. It actually has a half-life. So like, and I can't remember what the half-life is, if it's 2 hours.
It's like 8 hours or something.
It may be as much as that. So like,
yeah.
You feel like you have half the cup of coffee in your body, whatever, 4 to 8 hours later, instead of just like, oh, it's gone. And so it can definitely negatively impact your sleep. You got to be really careful. And sleep's so important. We as a society, we do all this hand waving about sleep. It's so important. You got to get your sleep. Make sure you get your sleep, unless there's something else that's more important to do. And if you look at the data, there isn't anything more important to do than to get your sleep. Like, there isn't.
Yeah, I feel like in a way it's been talked about so much that it's almost like people are desensitized for how important sleep is. And it's just one of those things. Yeah. We know it's important. But then we have this society that's, it's virtuous to burn the candle at both ends, that I don't need much sleep
when I die.
Yeah, that whole mentality. And, okay, so you're getting lots of things done and you're burning yourself out and you're only getting 5 hours of sleep a night. That's, not good for health. So it impacts all kinds of things. I mean, everything that you can imagine, it impacts. So the importance of sleep is not to be underestimated and should probably be dealt. If anybody has any kind of chronic condition, which is the majority of people probably listen to this podcast, and the people that I work with, there's a chronic condition, something they've dealt with for many, many years, in cases like 20 years sometimes. And if you have not gotten your sleep in check, then that's where you start. So just start working on your sleep before even worrying about anything else.
Yeah, I think sleep is the most restorative and healing medicine that you can ever take.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. So the other thing I wanted to mention on here, and, we don't want to say any specific claims about this as a supplement necessarily, but my experience with having long-term chronic thyroid cancer management and all the symptoms that come with that, and because of how the thyroid cancer process has been for me, I am very, very suppressed with my medication management, which means that for people who know thyroid numbers, the TSH number is really a small number, which can cause a lot of symptoms. And even though I feel like there's not a ton of researched data on suppressive thyroid treatment and high blood pressure, I feel that have had symptoms of that with some PVCs that I've, come up with, and all these kind of weird anomaly things that nothing is anything major, but one of them has resulted in blood pressure for me. And that's never been an issue for me. I've actually had very low blood pressure, like 105/65, very low, but healthy, I think, blood pressure. And, if it ever got to 120/80, which they say is your average or your normal blood pressure, I would be surprised, because that was sort of high-ish for me.
Right.
Well, it's been creeping up, to 130/80 and that kind of thing. And just recently it was so high when I went to a doctor appointment, and sometimes it happens with the whole white coat syndrome. But this was more than that. It was so high that if I was doing allergy testing, that if I would have done the allergy testing and for whatever reason, they would have needed to give me an EpiPen or epinephrine for a reaction, they wouldn't do that with the level of blood pressure I was having. So they wouldn't even do the test. So I drove a long time. I drove 6 hours total for this appointment to not be able to be tested because of this blood pressure issue. So this happened before, it was after we talked last time, but before I started taking the MyVitalC. And so I started doing that, and I was keeping track of the sleep stuff, of course, but I also was starting to take my blood pressure at home every morning. And it took a couple of days, but it went down drastically. We're talking from I can't remember, it was so high, I blocked it out, but it was in the 160s, 170s, over 100. Wow. And it was down to, again, 105/65, 10/180, 120/80. I mean, it just stayed in that really normal to low normal range that it used to be. And I've been checking I've been checking all the other parameters that can affect blood pressure, with regard to, metabolic markers, A1C, insulin, all those kinds of things, lipids, and all those are in check and in healthy ranges. And so I don't know, that was the biggest thing for me. I mean, yes, we just said the sleep is really important, but this was like a shocker to me how bad this had gotten. So the fact that it changed that drastically in that short a time for me was pretty, I don't know, that was pretty monumental change, I think.
Dramatic, right?
It was very.
So before I continue, talk about that, let's do our disclaimer. Absolutely, the FDA has not evaluated this as any sort of blood,
Right.
having any impact on blood pressure, and it's not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. I can share we've had a couple of other, off of the top of my head, I can think of 2 other testimonials that were talking about improvements in blood pressure. And could better sleep be impacting that? I mean, the reality
Maybe.
is, yeah, right. It could just be that better sleep. I'm not convinced that it's just that. And, we obviously need a lot more data to be convinced that our product is doing this, but we have had a couple of testimonials along those lines. So it's, it helps. Ironically, it also, like lowering your blood pressure, helps you sleep at night.
Right. It all works together, right? Yeah. So I think it'll be nice to, being off of it off on, so then it's good now that I'll just stay on. I'll just keep staying on, keep tracking. Just based on what I've seen and felt so far, I just assume that trajectory will stay and I'll just start, improving sleep as I go on and taking measures on my own too, to try to go to bed earlier than I maybe want to sometimes and all those kinds of things, but keep taking that. And I'm assuming it'll just keep improving. And then also to keep that blood pressure stable.
I do actually have a couple of tips, kind of sleep hygiene tips that your audience may or may not be aware of, but I like to throw them out. I did a PR tour with a friend of mine who's a really an amazing therapist and does a great job like handling the emotions behind what's going on. And so we kind of teamed up and I spoke about kind of practical applications and a little bit about my product. And he spoke about dealing with your emotions and how important that is for good sleep. And then how good sleep actually helps you deal with your emotions. But there's really kind of 3 key things that you can say that I'll share with you. One of them is related to naps. Some people think naps are bad. The data is actually really clear that naps are very, very good for you. If you want better mental performance in the afternoons and you have the ability to take a nap, you should actually absolutely take a nap. Couple caveats. Don't take a nap after 4. If you take a nap after 4, it can mess up your circadian rhythm and cause you to not get sleep that you need that night. And also make sure your nap is under 30 minutes. Really ideal nap time is just at 20 minutes. So if you do take a nap and you sometimes sleep longer than you want, make sure you set an alarm no more than 30 minutes. So that's really good. The other, we actually talked about alcohol already. Data's, I just read a conflicting report, but there's a lot of data that says 1 drink. And I actually think this is more related to lifestyle. If you're the kind of person who says, I'm going to kind of just relax and enjoy life with my 1 drink a night, I think it's the mindset behind that. That's more important than the actual alcohol. But 1 drink a night is documented to be good. Getting more, I think it's going to continue to get more controversial. But you want to make sure that you have that drink really 2 hours before you fall asleep, because alcohol has a sedative effect. It can make you quote unquote fall asleep faster, but we were just talking about the impact that it actually has on your physicality, with that resting heart rate taking longer. So yes, don't start drinking if you don't, and if you're having your drink, have it about 2 hours before you go to sleep. And then the last one is cell phones. This is, I don't know if these devices, everybody has them. Your computer, they all put out blue light. And a lot of people don't realize that blue light naturally occurs at its peak at noon, in the middle of the day when the sun is at the highest in the sky. And when that happens, if we're getting blue light from these electronic devices, we're actually convincing our mind and our physicality that it's the middle of the day. Well, that's not really good when you're trying to go to sleep. So these blue light blockers, turning on blue light blocking on your computer, like all computers have that now. Your cell phones have a blue light blocker. Turn those on really about 2 hours before sunset, so that you're really kind of getting away from those blue lights before you fall asleep. I think a lot of us have been on a computer really late, and you don't realize how late it is, and you're not really tired until you take like 2 steps away from the computer, and then you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. Mm-hmm. What that is the blue light coming off of that computer and convincing your brain that it's noon. And so your brain's like, if it's noon, I got stuff to do. I need to survive.
Yeah, so it really can mess up that circadian rhythm in the sleep wake cycle. That's for sure. I have noticed with blue light screens. I have an older computer too that I just put, like the screen protector on. That's the blue light one. And you don't know for sure how well those things actually work, but I noticed a big difference in like eye fatigue. Just if you are on for a long day of computer time, I've noticed a big change in that just with my eyes. So it's got to help with the sleep. Yeah.
And I did want to share one testimonial. Came in pretty recent.
Yeah.
We most of the testimonials I spoke about, in 2018, the first 9 months, the testimonials were pretty incredible. And frankly, the testimonials were from, everyday Joes like you and I, right? Who just go through life. Maybe we exercise a little, we try and eat right, and all of these good things. And we got good testimonials. I recently got a testimonial from what is definitely an outlier. His name's Anthony Kunkel, and he is a 2-time U.S. national ultra running champion. He runs 120 miles a week. His training regimen is 120 miles a week. Just a little perspective, I usually run about 2 miles. I would have to run 60 times a week to reach 120 miles. I don't think there's enough time at my pace.
I didn't think that was a thing. Like, I didn't know that people actually wanted to do that.
So, and he's all in, he keeps great data. He's like, talking about, he originally started on the product just taking 1 serving, said he didn't really notice much, tripled the serving, and then was like, wow, that's a big difference. Okay. And his quote, by the way, you won't hear this phrase maybe ever again. He's like, I don't feel like it helps me with recovery. I feel like it prevents the damage in the first place.
Oh.
So in the last 10 miles of a 50-mile jog, that's the thing you won't hear very, very often. No. In the last 10 miles of a 50-mile run, where normally my leg strength and stability have been a performance issue, I no longer have that performance issue.
Wow.
So it's pretty phenomenal to know that even at that extremely high level, this is positively impacting people.
I bet you're going to be getting some other elite athlete testimonials here pretty soon.
Well, in fact, there's a platform called, I think it's Open Sponsor, that is just all athletes. So we've already engaged like 9 athletes. So like, hey, get the product, try the product. I'm working with a UFC fighter and his sister who manages UFC fighters. So yeah, we're trying, like, that's just a great avenue. Those people are looking for, how do I get that next best thing? And you'll actually talk about physical, your ability to be so incredibly physically active. There's like 3 components. You got to exercise, you got to eat, and you got to sleep. And if we're helping them get that sleep, then that's one of the 3 pillars of great performance.
Right. That's amazing. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, certainly we should share. If anybody in your audience is interested in trying the product, we do have a URL that's specific to you. It's MyVitalC, C as in carbon.com/rock bottom wellness. And that'll get you to kind of your page. And then if they use a coupon code rock bottom wellness, that'll get them additional $15 off of their initial order.
Cool.
And if when they land on that page, they'll find the bottle. They'll find we've got a really unique packaging. We call it single shots. basically they're like this.
Mhm.
They're a small little ampule that has exactly 5 mils or 1 teaspoon. And if you get those on subscription, you automatically get 25% off. You can cancel at any time. Our team is not trained to talk you out of canceling. It's really easy. Just go ahead and take care of that advantage, take care of that discount. And then also, again, use the Rock Bottom Wellness coupon code to get an additional $15 off.
Oh, perfect. Yes, I'll put that all in the show notes so people can access that. I highly recommend people check it out. I mean, if you're just working or wanting to improve your sleep, which we all need to and should be interested in doing that, this is a great place to start. So it's super fascinating to me, interesting to me. I love how you came into this not intending to be in the health space, and here you are. And it sounds
doing the best we can.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. But when opportunities knock on the door, you gotta open them. So
yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here again. And we'll
Tiffany,
chat
thank
soon.
you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care.